Again, running this show on on solo. Let's do this again. Hello, my name is Stephen Barr. Welcome to AWS Made Easy Ask Us Anything, episode number 43. We really appreciate you being here, and we've got a really good show today. Now, we had Jonathan Vogel and Reluca Constantin of AWS both here. Apologize for the audio mix-up. We have Jonathan Vogel and Reluca Constantin of AWS here. They were here yesterday for great conversation. Jonathan's in the chat. Hi, Jonathan. Thank you for being here, and thanks for the audio check. Really appreciate that. We had a great chat with them, and we're going to have a follow-up conversation and follow-up blog post with them. So please ask your questions in the chat. That was a really good conversation. I want to do a few news announcements first. We have an upcoming webinar, and this is coming on the day after tomorrow. Let's put this on the screen. Here we go. Pay less for AWS. 3 pain-free ways to save more now. This is our Pay Less for AWS webinar. This is the day after tomorrow at 10 a.m. or 10 a.m. Central. So that would be 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific time. And this is going to be a really good webinar. Raul, Miguel, and Hillary have been working hard to put together a lot of great content on actionable insights to help save money on your AWS bill. So definitely come and join and check this out. You can register here. The link is in the chat. All right, and there we go. We've got Jonathan in the stream. Welcome, Jonathan. So please put your questions in the chat. Jonathan's here, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Also wanted to mention a blog post that just dropped, Elasticsearch / OpenSearch to Graviton. This just came out yesterday. I'm putting the link in the comments. And this is from the Cloud Fixer Finder series of blogs. We're really enjoying producing these for you. And this one is talking about moving your managed services to the Graviton processor. So the idea is there's the AWS OpenSearch service, which can host either OpenSearch or Elasticsearch, the software. And the OpenSearch service is a fully managed service. So why do you care what architecture it's running? Now, that being said, Graviton is a much better price performance than its alternatives. So we've got a great blog post here. And please check this out. I talk about the history of OpenSearch and Elasticsearch a bit, talk about why using Graviton for OpenSearch. We do a price performance comparison. So as an example here, the m5.large.search instance is 142 per hour, whereas a comparable M6G, that's the Graviton 2 instance, is 128. And a neat thing about the Graviton instances are that you actually get all physical cores rather than the hyper-threaded cores with the Intel. So that's also helpful. So yeah, check that out. That's really good. There's a lot of useful information here on how to use it. But most importantly, you can automate this with CloudFix. So with CloudFix, we can scan your infrastructure and show you the eligible OpenSearch service installations that could be migrated. And then with one click, you can take that action and migrate over your OpenSearch instances to Graviton and start saving. So I'll put that in there. Also, another announcement that's coming up. Well, AWS just today launched a global generative AI accelerator for startups. I saw this on Adam Selipsky's LinkedIn page just this morning. So this is really exciting. So generative AI, that's your Chat GPT, that's your Midjourney for generative art. And they highlight one company called Runway, which has been partnered with AWS. They do some really neat things, to check that out, generating videos, generating images. I'll have a lot more to say about generative AI. I've been experimenting with it quite a bit on my own. It's really, really fascinating. And actually, if for detailed readers of the CloudFix blog, you can see here's our EBS volume blog post, and it's about cleaning up stale EBS volumes. So I used the Midjourney generative AI to generate Barney the dinosaur cleaning up old digital assets. And so it's really neat. I'm not a a digital artist, but I could type this in and a generative AI will figure out how to mix all these things into a piece of art. The generative AI is a huge deal. It's really exciting to see Amazon launch their generative AI accelerator for startups. Very excited to see what comes out of this program. All right, so that is the news for today. Now we want to jump into the interview with Reluca, Jonathan, and Raul and myself. I hope you really enjoy it. All right, without further ado, let's cue that into the stream. All right, well, we're really lucky today. We have with us Reluca Constantin and Jonathan Vogel, both of AWS, and we're welcome to the show. And thank you so much for joining us. Now,
thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. Why don't you tell us about yourself? Reluca, you go first.
Sure. As you mentioned, I am a database engineer with Amazon Web Services for close to 5 years now. I specialize in MySQL engines and most of all in observability and telemetry, which can be challenging, especially for MySQL, for open source in general. I come from an Oracle background. I used to work for Oracle for like 11 or 12 years, support, consultancy. So with commercial engines, I found that database practitioners are more used and more familiar to how to debug performance issues in their databases. Now for open source, things are a little bit different. That part is less developed, I would say. So this comes as a challenge. And that's why I was really happy to onboard this journey with AWS and make performance troubleshooting more accessible for AWS customers.
Oh, cool. We're excited to dive into the details of what that means. Now, Jonathan, what about yourself? Now, we met 2 months ago now at an AWS event and just kind of had this idea for this live stream basically since that time. So it was very lucky that this has all come full circle now. Please tell us about yourself.
Absolutely, Stephen. Yeah, it was so awesome having you join the workshop. This was back in February, and saying, "Hey, I got a live stream. You should come on board." And so excited to see it actually happen. My name is Jonathan Vogel. I'm a developer advocate at AWS. I'm a computer geek. I study computer science, and I've been prior to this a software developer for many years. I got really passionate about DevOps and just automating everything throughout my career journey. And that led me into a DevOps specialist solution architect role here at AWS about 3 years ago. And then a couple years into that, I decided, hey, what would it be like on this AI space and evangelizing AI for DevOps and all that. So that's what led me here today.
Awesome. And today we are going to be talking about DevOps Guru, isn't that right?
I got the sticker from the workshop, DevOps Guru.
Nice. I love it.
As soon as this is over, this is going on the laptop.
Jonathan, I want one of those too, please.
You got it. It's in
we got to ship one here to India. It's
right.
a long way. Or I'm in Seattle in another month and a half or whatever. So we'll catch up there. But yeah, why don't one of you tell us about DevOps Guru? I don't think it's one of the mainstream services that everyone talks about all the time. But I think it's incredibly important and incredibly valuable when it comes to anything real and operational. So who wants to go describing what DevOps Guru is?
Jonathan, I'll let you take this one. Yeah. I'll hop on the DevOps Guru for RDS, which is more of my specialty.
Sounds good. Yeah, so DevOps Guru is a fully managed AIOps solution on AWS. It, in essence, is ingesting operational metrics from your AWS resources and applying its pre-trained ML models to look for anomalies and generate those anomalies, or rather generate the detection of those anomalies in the form of an insight. And the insight will then aggregate the different anomalous metrics and, where applicable, pinpoint you to some potential root causes for you to remediate.
Got it. So should I think of this more like a higher order service which is built up of CloudWatch for your metrics, where you pick all of that data up, then you use anomaly detection from the vertical AI solutions, and then generate the insight and present it in a quick site-like dashboard?
Kind of like that, yeah. And I know Reluca has definitely more expertise on the database side, in particular relational database support, backed by performance insights. But as you mentioned, CloudWatch is another mechanism, right? Performance insights being one that Reluca will get into here shortly. But CloudWatch, just think about those default CloudWatch metrics, right? You spin up a Lambda function, and what do you get? You're going to get things like latency, error rates, just right out of the box from AWS.
Right.
And it's going to be generating those metrics, for instance, when you invoke the Lambda function. And those are the kind of metrics that, when enabled, when DevOps Guru is enabled on one or more of those resources, will ingest in real time to look for any potential anomalies.
Got it.
So I guess thinking through the ops, because we have AI ops, ML ops, and people tend to see AI and ML in very similar spaces. But in this case, in terms of ops, when people say ML ops, they're talking about the infrastructure to get machine learning pipelines working, whereas AI ops, it's using AI or using machine learning, and get into the pedantic differences of what that means from a statistical perspective, but using an analysis to actually look at your existing operations. And then I guess the AI part comes in, correct me if I'm wrong, but the AI part comes in that it's being prescriptive. It's not just saying, here's what happened, but saying, here's how you fix it.
Yeah, so the DevOps Guru for RDS has two components exactly for the reason that you mentioned. First of all, we are being reactive in our insights and detecting what comes out of the pattern in a database activity, for example. And that means excluding periodical spikes, like spurious spikes. For example, if you have a batch job running every day or every weekend, DevOps Guru will be able to detect that is periodical, and therefore it's just more noise, and it will not signal that out. But if it's something, an anomalous database load all of a sudden, then it will alert you, and it will provide context. Like it will pull out the relevant metrics. Maybe you have an increased number of connections, or memory consumption, or CPU consumption, or come up with the structure of the wait events in the database. The observability part that I was mentioning, I find so valuable. So it will present all of that to you, and I will share, I'll be happy to share a screen with you to see exactly what it looks like. But there's also this proactive part of DevOps Guru for RDS, which comes and tells you, we detect that your metrics are heading in the wrong direction. You are above a certain threshold, and now your database is not currently in trouble, but you might just get towards that in that direction. So maybe you want to take action now before it becomes an actual problem. And here's why, also presenting context around that finding. So yeah, I'm really excited to see that we are approaching performance holistically and not just being reactive, but also proactive.
So, Reluca, I have a very curious question on this. There seems to be two different ways of treating the data. It seems like the first part is that you're using the data that comes from all of these metrics to generate or to identify anomalies in them, which seems relatively straightforward in the approach. That's pretty clear. But when you said that it can look at all of these metrics and also tell you when you might potentially have a crash, that seems or sounds at least like a pre-trained model that we're talking about, that you have experience, you have data from a number of different scenarios that have told you that when X, Y, and Z happen together, or whatever the set of scenarios that happen, together in that space, you've learned that could potentially cause an issue. So is there a combination of pre-trained models as well as training on the data that the customer themselves is providing for their setup?
The pre-trained model that you're referring to would be the database engineer expertise that Amazon onboarded. So we have seen over the time in a large fleet and in the management of the largest e-commerce business database, Amazon.com, that there are certain conditions that when they occur simultaneously or they exceed certain thresholds can lead to trouble. So that's where we come in and detect the set of conditions that should alarm a DBA. And now if you're not a DBA or as a customer, you don't have database administrators, which are usually a hot resource, hot commodity to come by. You won't have maybe DevOps engineers or just developers. Using AWS with DevOps Guru for RDS will give you that insight and will help you prevent further problems.
That is good to know. Follow-up question on that. As more and more of these services are becoming serverless, and I know there are flavors of serverless, some are glorified auto-scaling groups, some of them are truly serverless. Is there a need for DevOps Guru as a lot of these services end up in the serverless bucket or the serverless category? Is there a need? Because the whole value proposition of serverless seems to be that everything gets taken care of for you behind the scenes. Scaling up, scaling down, deciding what resources you need, all of that stuff. You shouldn't have to worry about the instance at all. So is DevOps Guru primarily for customers who are still on non-serverless versions of everything, basically? And as they get to serverless, this stuff just gets baked into the serverless offering?
I love
managed by you?
I love this question because it is one of the engineering questions that we have to answer in today's world, right? So, yes, I give you that serverless solutions should already come with this prediction incorporated, and we shouldn't alert on a particular trouble condition, but also take act and auto scale so that you don't run into that condition. And so we were discussing internally what we can do for serverless customers in terms of proactive insights. And we did find some applicability still. For example, if you as a customer are using a serverless database, and even though you're a wise customer, you chose a good solution, you're not maybe very knowledgeable in using your database. You're not a database administrator, as I mentioned.
Right.
So you would fire up a transaction and forget that you did that and go out for a coffee break. That is something you should still be alerted on because you can hold locks in your database that will prevent the database from operating properly. And you don't want to scale up just because of that. You might just want to be alerted and close that transaction in due time. So yes, I do find there's still room for applicability in this space.
Got it. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, I'll add. Reluca is definitely speaking from a database or relational database lens. And when you look at Amazon DevOps Guru holistically, we support a number of what you would consider serverless resources like Lambda, DynamoDB, API Gateway. And what we did was we listened to our customers, and they had common issues or common trends of patterns that would happen with these serverless resources that should always be behaving perfectly fine by themselves, right? And we found out that we needed to build some of this into this solution to help them. One example is with Lambda, right? So you have an issue where you're invoking that Lambda a lot, and you could have cold starts, and customers said, "Hey, we can't tolerate that." So, Lambda team built this provision concurrency, so that way they could have additional warm Lambda available to respond and ensure latency was as low as possible. But then you can have a situation where it's spilling over, right? And that's one of the default metrics that Lambda out of the box with CloudWatch would emit. And DevOps Guru could ingest and say, hey, you're spilling this over. You might want to consider bumping up your provision concurrency. So that's one example. And that's definitely a performance situation, right? We want to lower the latency for our end users. But you could have kind of an opposite scenario where you've just really over provisioned, right? You've provisioned additional capacity in DynamoDB. You provision additional capacity in Lambda. And some folks do this to make sure that they have that ready to go. Maybe they're not actually using it. So that's another metric DevOps Guru could ingest utilization of this concurrency, right? So imagine a scenario where you provision all this additional concurrency, you're spending a lot of money on that, and DevOps Guru says, hey, you've not really done much at all over the past month. Like, you should definitely dial this back. And here's the data, and here's the trend, and based on our math, here's the recommendation of what you should do. So in addition to, we talk a lot about performance and how to, address anomalies in folks' applications. You also have a potential cost optimization element here, right? Where it's looking for ways where you might be overspending, and you could dial things back to have more optimal cost. And I know, especially in today's time, a lot of folks are asking, how can I reduce my costs? And this is another mechanism for folks to take advantage of DevOps Guru on the cost optimization side.
Well, Raul and I are definitely well entrenched in the cost optimization world for AWS. It was interesting. I really like what you said. We were in a meeting just the other day, and Raul, you said this, it really stuck with me, that people always think about the scale up, but they almost never think about the scale down. And you're always thinking about growing and getting bigger, but sometimes you have the opposite, where you're just through the natural ebbs and flows, or maybe a certain service gets retired and things are over provisioned. And so it's good that you can get alerts on that as well, because otherwise you have lots of idle resources and no one wants to pay for what they're not using.
Right on.
Correct. And in fact, I think just continuing on that, I think what I was also saying during that conversation was that scaling down is way harder, and it requires a lot more effort, it requires a lot more thinking, because what most engineers fear is that if they make the wrong scale down decision, they end up losing customers or end up losing service. And that, in their minds, is way more expensive than spending, a few hundred or maybe a few thousand, or in some cases a few million extra dollars, without actually doing the analysis to make sure that is the case. So that actually brings me to the next question for both of you. Does DevOps Guru, I mean, we heard from you that it generates all these insights, and I've played around with it, and the insights and alerts and stuff like that are pretty awesome. How does it help in actually implementing the changes or implementing the action that needs to happen corresponding to those insights? Is it just reporting, or is there any actionability associated with it as well?
I think the easiest way to answer this would be to actually show what an insight looks like. At least
that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Let's bring that up.
For example, I was just playing with my databases the other day, so let me see how I can share my screen, and then you'll see exactly what I find actionable around these insights.
And once Reluca has shown us the DB side of things, Jonathan, we'd love to see the non-database side of things as well, to see some examples of neat insights coming out of DevOps Guru.
For DevOps Guru, for RDS, you see the clear distinction that I mentioned, the reactive and proactive insight. Right. So in the reactive insights, we can have notifications like database load increase and the anomalous metrics that led to that insight. For example, the write latency and the database connections number for this database. And if we go in the detailed analysis, we get even more details. The wait events, which are rather neat because they can help you adjust your analysis to the necessary metrics further down. We do present here the metrics that we associated that spiked around that time frame. Like at the time of this database load increase, we also had the number of queries per second. We had the database connection spikes. But we also had these particular wait events that are dominant in your database activity. And if you click on the wait event, you get an explanation of this. And I can tell you from personal experience, this saves you quite a bit of Googling. And furthermore, you get a nice reference like the troubleshooting documentation, which will tell you exactly what to look at, what are the likely causes, what are the most interesting actions around those that context, and what to do. Because essentially that's what we want. And we're not going to do that on your behalf, because maybe you do not want to turn off auto commit, but this is something you should be aware of and take the decision and implement it if that's the right scenario for your database, or decide how to structure your load to commit less often and use batching more often. And then the other case of insights, the proactive ones. Oh boy, I'm killing these databases, aren't I? So first of all, we have this
I'm pretty sure you have some load tests running behind the scenes that are just generating these alerts.
For example, we have the list of the idle in transaction scenario that I mentioned. This is an Aurora Postgres database. We now have RDS Postgres coverage as well, but this is an Aurora one. So this tells me I have an idle transaction that's running for more than, what is this threshold? More than 3,600 seconds, and I might want to tune that down. And okay, this has stopped now, but I'm still interested in seeing this, because maybe it's a repeated pattern. Maybe one of my users needs to be alerted on this and on the consequences of this action. And these are the consequences right here. And these are things that I can do to prevent this from happening again. I'll just tune this parameter. And of course, the troubleshooting documentation with a lot more details if I have time to read through it.
So this can really help you write more effective database code, because often you're kind of left in the dark in terms of, well, how long should this take, right? If I think we've all written some naive ETL code, which is not using batches, right? We're just committing every single, it's easy to just copy paste some Python from Stack Overflow and all right, I've got my ETL done, but it might be doing something silly that you can then later optimize. And so this is showing you your errors will eventually surface this way.
Yes, and speaking of that, copy paste code, temporary tables that get created on disk instead of in memory is also a great example that you can get notified on. And when more temporary tables go to disk than in memory, then you might want to tune some database parameters, or change the data structure that you're using in those queries, or just index some columns. And those are mostly for the database administrating part, the management of the database, but it also applies at the coding level, because you can restructure your code, as you mentioned. Yep, so those are the examples that I wanted to share with you.
Yeah. Reluca, a curious question on this one. Wow, I've never seen that telescopic StreamYard display in a while.
Sorry.
But also, curious question. How many of these insights, and these seem incredibly valuable insights that come out of DevOps Guru, I'm pretty sure it makes most developers' life super simple, because otherwise they'd have to do all this instrumentation, collect all of this, and actually then generate the insight. But question for you, how many of these insights, or what proportion of these insights are for changes to be made in the AWS infrastructure or the AWS resource itself versus the application level, where you got some insight, but invariably the fix to these problems needs to happen in the application? What would you say is the proportion of those insights, especially when it comes to the database side of DevOps Guru?
That's a trick question, because when you look at a database problem, it's a never-ending story between, like a battle, almost a fight, constant fighting between the developers and the database administrators. It's the database. No, it's the application. That is an ongoing issue. I've run into it almost in every work environment. And so when we looked at these scenarios, we tried to come up with advice for both cases. Here's what you can tune in the database, and here's what you can tune in the application side. Like committing less often is an application type of recommendation, whereas tuning a parameter is on the database side too. So
Got it.
it's hard to quantify maybe in time as more customers will use this solution and will provide feedback, which would be really nice. We'll find out which is more useful, more used.
Awesome. Jonathan, you want to
I have
share?
no idea. Yeah, I've been thinking about how would I answer this. It really depends. So I'll just +1 Reluca.
Okay. You want to share what the non-RDS insights look like?
Let's see if I can share my screen. I'd love to just show a quick visual of how this thing works. So I have this slide here, and it shows these different input signals. For instance, CloudWatch, as we talked about, RDS Performance Insights, or PI, we talked about. We didn't talk about CloudTrail. These are different input signals that go into these pre-trained models underneath the hood of DevOps Guru, and that's what's fed into those to then potentially generate an insight. I also wanted to touch on, like, okay, great, you get an insight, but what now? And a lot of times folks will ask, how can I operationalize this? Can I integrate it with my systems manager ops center? Of course you can. Can I have it dial my systems on PagerDuty or Atlassian Ops Training? Yes, you can. So I just wanted to also give a shout out there on how folks can conceptualize this from input signals to insights to actually operations, right? How do you, when you're woken up at 2 a.m. and you're paged,
right,
what do you do, right? And a lot of our folks I talk to are, and especially seeing this trend grow, infrastructure as code. And CloudFormation, of course, is pretty popular. We have the ability with this solution to monitor. You can monitor your entire account, or you can say, hey, I want to monitor, hey, I have these 2 CloudFormation stacks, and these things run our business. If anything happens to these workloads, it's catastrophic. And that's what I want to monitor. So you can configure it to monitor by CloudFormation. And that's just from a monitoring standpoint. You also have this capability of picking up changes. So with CloudTrail data coming in, you could say, hey, you changed the CloudFormation, right? You modified the resource. That's picked up by CloudTrail. And that can be tied into the insight as well. So imagine a circumstance, and I'll just hop right into a serverless example here. And I'll go back to the scenario. It's 2 a.m. on a Sunday. It's always 2 a.m. on a Sunday that your page just goes up. And you got an API gateway, right? That's you make a REST call. It invokes the Lambda function, which has got some code in whatever language you want. And that then in turn, in this case, invokes DynamoDB to read or write some data. Imagine all these things are astray, right? You have API gateway throwing 5xx. You have Lambda throwing errors. You have DynamoDB getting throttled. And it is 2 a.m. on a Sunday. What is the symptom, and what could be the root cause? And so that's where DevOps Guru is able to aggregate these different anomalies, different anomalous behavior into the form of the one insight, and then map in this case, could say, hey, you modified your DynamoDB and you reduced read capacity. Somebody did this an hour ago. Well, I don't know why they did that, but CloudFormation and via CloudTrail picked that up, and that gets mapped into an event timeline view in the console. So that's just kind of a quick, this is kind of how it works. This is a quick example. I don't have this exact scenario in my DevOps Guru console right now, but I can give you another serverless scenario. And this is one, again, we just listened to our customers, right? They had this circumstance where, the Lambda timeout exceeds SQS visibility. And then you end up in a situation where you potentially might be invoking the Lambda or processing the item more than once, which is definitely wasteful and could have a cascading impact. So this is actually picking up, it's mapping those two AWS resources, the Lambda resource and the SQS resource, and sees that they're connected, sees that the timeout differs, and it's going to generate this insight. When you scroll down, you can see that the data here, which isn't as helpful as this recommendation, right? And this is one of the, Rahul, you were asking, like, what does this recommendation look like for a serverless example, right? So here we're actually calling out exactly how you set visibility, and what you could do to change it. In this case, pointing you to some user documentation.
Well, that would have been really. I was thinking I wrote some automation when I was first learning SQS and how those timeouts work, and it would have been really handy to have that suggestion of, it's wondering why I kept getting the same things over and over and over again. So that would have been really helpful.
Okay, so I'm going to ask the next question, which is, and this is for both of you, Reluca and Jonathan. What is the one insight that you see so often across different customer accounts where you're like, sometimes you get frustrated that customers don't turn on DevOps Guru, because if they did, they would save so much time and money with the insight that comes, because this, like, what is the most, you guys run everything by numbers. What is the one insight that sits on top of the list that gets flagged the most often across the entire customer base today? And you would wish that everyone just turned on DevOps Guru so that they could see that insight impacts their account or not. So both on the RDS database side and the rest of the AWS services.
Well, for MySQL, I would say it's been a too long InnoDB history list. Now, if you're a MySQL practitioner, you know that InnoDB history list is like a list of all the records that have been changed in the database. And then MySQL does this optimization where it might not flush all the logs, delete, it marks as deleted records, but it keeps this history list, and it will only flush that to disk during a time that's absolutely necessary, like when you do a shutdown, a clean shutdown, or when you have to upgrade the database. And in those scenarios, it's when a very long list of records that have been committed but not actually flushed to disk will surface. And in that point in time, you might not want to deal with everything. You might not want your upgrade to take 3 days. You would expect it to take maybe 30 minutes, but you don't know. You have that backlog, that unpaid debt in your database, so to say. And so alerting customers when that history list gets close to 1 million is going to save a lot of frustration and unpleasant surprises. and that is one insight that I really want our customers to have. It's really handy. It can avoid a lot of trouble, and I've seen it more often than needed, way more often than needed.
That is sage advice. I think the audience here is going to be delighted to at least get that, and hopefully we'll turn on DevOps Guru for RDS. Jonathan, what's your pick?
Yeah, I've been scratching my head on this one because what I love about the solution is there's science behind it. So when I talk to customers and they're showing me stuff, sometimes I see stuff that I've never seen, and I'm like, this is awesome. I didn't know this could do this. I would say I'm going to have to give you an ambiguous response, and that is serverless, right? So where I think this solution differentiates in this AWS space is with our like the example I showed you, DynamoDB, API Gateway, Lambda. If you're running those resources, and in particular, if you use any of those resources for something that's very important to your success, to your business,
right? That's
where I recommend folks start. Hey, monitor there, and then let's circle back in a few weeks and talk about what it may have done for you. And obviously with the additionally to +1 Reluca, on the database side, I mean, that's where we have some pretty cool capabilities. I want to call out though, it is with DevOps Guru for RDS, it was just Aurora, MySQL, and Postgres engines. As of Friday or just the other day, we've launched RDS Postgres support. So that is also, I don't know if we mentioned that. I can't remember on the call or on the live stream here, but that's another cool thing to shout out, because folks have been asking for when am I going to get my RDS Postgres support, and we have delivered.
So as of Friday, they can use this.
March 30th. I don't remember when that was, but I guess it was
within the past few days.
Postgres is shipping a new feature. That's going to be really exciting. Postgres is huge.
Absolutely.
So that is huge. That's phenomenal.
A lot of work went into that. So good.
I wanted to pause the interview for 1 second. The interview's been really, really interesting. I wanted to thank Cloudfix, sponsor of this live stream. We've really enjoyed learning all about DevOps Guru, the actions, the insights it can produce. And I was thinking about the common ground between Cloudfix and DevOps Guru in terms of finding those details, finding those actionable insights, and then being able to proactively fix those things. I really liked Reluca's insight about how with MySQL you can have this long history that just accumulates, and eventually you have to pay it, and you don't want to pay that at the wrong time. One of our things that we talk about with AWS is GPT-2 to GPT-3 instances, where these also accumulate, and it's costs you don't need to pay, not turning on S3 intelligent tiering. So we're going to have a quick message from Cloudfix, and then we'll be back for the rest of the interview.
Public cloud costs going up and your AWS bill growing without the right cost controls? Cloudfix saves you 10 to 20% on your AWS bill by focusing on AWS recommended fixes that are 100% safe with zero downtime and zero degradation in performance. The best part? With your approval, Cloudfix finds and implements AWS fixes to help you run more efficiently. Visit cloudfix.com for a free savings assessment.
Goes to the team.
That's awesome. We should put up, we will try and in post-processing, try and put up at least a banner of the announcement. And we'll probably get a review on that shortly. I'm going to put you on the stand one last time, which is, what would be the one example of a customer who ended up saving a lot of money from insights that came from DevOps Guru? That sticks to mind. Yeah. If it wasn't for DevOps Guru, they'd just be bleeding money like crazy.
Yeah, there's definitely some that I can talk about. What's open to the public here, and I'll let me just share my screen because I have a couple examples handy if folks are very very curious. So this is the screen I was sharing before. I mean, this is the DevOps Guru page. If you go to your favorite search engine and type in DevOps Guru, you can see about this solution what it is. But if you scroll down, you'll see various customers that have liked what we do and are willing to publicly talk about it. And so these you can click on and take a look at. I mean, there's various quotes here. I was looking through these quotes again. I was like, is there any like really hard data? Like saving hours upon hours of resolving issues. Like that to me is a little ambiguous, but it definitely saved HCL some hours. And in particular here, what's really cool, and again, going back to that scenario, you're woken up at 2 a.m. on a Sunday, how can you reduce the mean time to recover? And the best way to do that is to bring you the data you need in a consolidated way with potential next steps. So you'll have some different, this one, their future, this will save my team. I need to call Valentino and see how many hours they've been saving or how much time they've reduced their MTTR. But here's some examples. And we also have various blogs here. So folks, if you're also interested in like further reading, we got Bloom IP, we got Blue People, we got Slice. These are actually companies that use the solution and we're like, hey, we're so excited about it. We'd like to get a blog together.
Well, I'll get those URLs from you and put them in the show notes. That's really exciting to see how people are actually using this in the real world to save. One of my questions, how quickly do these insights bubble up? How long are we talking between when the problem arises and when people know about it?
Yes, we don't want to be noisy. We don't want to be flagging things and then realize a minute later we shouldn't have flagged it. So it depends on the scenario. I know with, Reluca can certainly speak to the database side, but, it could be minutes, but it could be longer than that, depending on if we feel we want to have high confidence in what we're alerting on. So while the data is ingested in real time, we do want to make sure we have confidence when we're, for instance, for folks that do operationalize, we don't want to be hitting pagers at 2 a.m. on a Sunday unless we know it should really be an issue. Reluca, if you'd like to share on the DevOps Guru for RDS side, feel free.
Right. So the important part of any ML-based solution is detecting that false periodicity, detecting the periodicity and avoiding false alarms. So for that, you need to have some time to analyze a database or resources activity and get an understanding from an algorithm perspective, even as you would as a human as well. What is periodical and what is not? When is something out of the common? What is that common sense, right? When is the pattern broken? So we do need to train the model for a few days. It can be 7 days, it can be 15 days. For proactive, we're going to be a little less conservative because these are proactive advice. So we can look at the data for the last 15 minutes and already start noticing that a history list is growing too much or similar advice. So it does depend, but that is why, if it makes sense.
Got it.
Thank you. Can I call something out? I should have mentioned.
Please go ahead.
When they first enable, they should expect some level of baselining before anticipating any kind of insight. So regardless of the situation, again, it can be shorter, but when they first enable it, it is then ingesting that operational data to establish that baseline. So after that period, which could take up to a couple of days, depending on the scenario, that's the point at which folks could expect anomalies to be detected.
Does the AI model, just continuing from there, does the AI model have an understanding of things like holidays and stuff like that? So for example, in AWS Forecast, if you just give it data and it's coming up, it understands the fact that, oh, this might be a Black Friday spike or Christmas Eve spike or whatever, depending on the service. There are specific events which are going to see spikes, and the forecast, like AWS Forecast, understands some of those concepts and builds those into the model as it's generating them from your data. Does DevOps Guru have similar stuff? Like if I started DevOps Guru 2 months before Black Friday, and then Black Friday is the peak, is it going to mess up all of my alerts and alarms and have things going off all over the place because it doesn't understand that this is Black Friday? And will it be an anomaly, or does it have that understanding?
Now I feel like we should invite our data scientists to the talk. Because we have some wonderful people working on these machine learning algorithms, and they are better equipped to handle these questions. I know we detect periodicity, and I know we include in our models, and we continuously improve the models as well. Like in terms of algorithms, they have just done some fine tuning. They sent us all the data. It's very complex math. I can't honestly say that I understand everything I'm reading in terms of machine learning, but I'm not able to say that with certainty, but I am definitely going to ask Vikramank and the other scientists in our team.
Yeah. That was my question, because I heard in the last couple of minutes words like confidence, periodicity, false alarms, a lot of statistical terms starting to work their way in there. Do you have to have some statistical background to use it, or how has it been generalized?
You don't need to be a machine learning guru in order to use DevOps Guru, which is exactly what we're trying.
You've got a guru to refer to.
Yes, exactly.
Perfect.
Awesome. We will definitely reach out with a bunch of other questions that we covered in this, but we need to kind of refer back to your team, but also what questions that come from the audience. But thank you so much, Reluca and Jonathan, for this amazing conversation. We learned a lot. While I have used DevOps Guru, I haven't been hands-on with it for a while now, but it seems like there's been tons of new stuff that's been coming up. And congratulations once again on the Postgres release. Looking forward to getting my hands dirty and playing with all the new stuff that comes out there. So thank you once again for joining us here and sharing all these amazing insights.
Thank you for having us. It was a wonderful talk.
Oh, it's our pleasure. And so as we're wrapping up, I know there's some events coming up. Jonathan, do you have a moment to talk about those?
Absolutely, yes. So the event you came to was in person in Seattle, but we wanted to be inclusive of everybody in the world that might be listening out here. So we're doing more of these, what Stephen participated in, which is essentially hands-on workshops. So if you'd like to have a temporary free AWS account, you'd like to be in a room led by these AWS experts and get access to this account to go through different scenarios and learn about this stuff, I'd love for you to sign up. The registration link is here. That link will take you to the Americas session, but within that same page, if you prefer a different time zone, we have a link for EMEA and APJ inclusive time zone options as well. So please register. I love hearing from folks. So if you're listening and you're like, I got more questions, I'm not available on April 12th. Is there another option? Feel free to connect with me. You're more than welcome to follow or connect with me directly on LinkedIn, as well as if it's okay, Stephen and Rahul, I can drop my email in here. People just more than welcome to email me. If you prefer email, shoot me an email. I'd love to continue the conversation. And I just want to say a special thanks to Reluca. I know your time is very valuable as an engineer at AWS, and it's great. It's a great partnering you today on this, and just love being able to show the world what you're working on. And Stephen and Rahul, thank you both very much for the opportunity to join your live stream.
No, absolutely. Thank you for joining us for this. This has been incredible.
Thank you so much. This was a really energizing conversation, and it was a great opportunity, just like Jonathan said, to showcase our work, our thousands of hours of work that go into building these solutions, and I'm hoping they will keep delighting our customers. Thank you.
That was a great interview with Jonathan and Reluca of DevOps Guru. I'm going to put the link up here in the description. So there, check out that seminar. Again, as Jonathan mentioned, I went in person and it was extremely rewarding. That was a really nice seminar. I learned a lot, and I got to get a temporary AWS account, overload some servers, watch the alerts come in, and it was really good. So make sure to go to that. And then again, reach out to Jonathan or Reluca if you have any questions. They've been kind enough to provide their contact details. I'll put the Jonathan's contact there. That is Jonathan Vogel SW on LinkedIn, or Vogel John A at Amazon. And then as well, this is Reluca's LinkedIn. So reach out to them if you have any questions. And thank you so much to both of them for graciously volunteering your time for that discussion. All right. Well, we will see you next week. Have a really lovely afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you are. All right. Bye-bye.
Is your AWS public cloud bill growing? While most solutions focus on visibility, CloudFix saves you 10 to 20% on your AWS bill by finding and implementing AWS recommended fixes that are 100% safe. There's zero downtime and zero degradation in performance. We've helped organizations save millions of dollars across tens of thousands of AWS instances. Interested in seeing how much money you can save? Visit cloudfix.com to schedule a free assessment and see your yearly savings.